Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to the newest episode of Uncovering the Underground radio podcast show, brought to you by my companies Brutal Business Entertainment and Celestial Oddities Radio. As always, I will be your host for this great adventure this evening. My name is Reverend Frater Crow, and I want to thank you for listening in tonight. Whether listening live, streaming after the fact, or you've downloaded this episode to your device for on the go, any which of the three is fine. We do want to thank you for your patronage and support, but by clicking the like, share, and follow button on whatever platform you're listening to us from, whether it be iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, Google, Amazon, you name it, we're on all platforms. So listen where you feel comfortable, but by clicking those buttons, moves us up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in the loop with new episodes as they air, and gives you unfiltered access to our past archives. And folks, there's something for absolutely everyone who's an underground entertainment fan. From music to modeling, from stars of the big screen, to comedy and oddities and everything in between. We air you an episode every single Thursday night, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, interviewing and getting to know guests, who they are, what it is they do, having a nice talk show discussion with them. If they are musicians, we play their music. We try to show off the art of anybody who might be an artist or model through, the interwebs, but bands get a little bit of that extra shine whenever we can play their music on the air. Tonight, we certainly have a great band with us. We'll be talking about them in just a moment. If you missed the last couple episodes, make sure you jump back and check them out. Or even last season, there's just a lot of great guests that have been on the show. We're over 70 guests on specifically this show, and there's a couple other radio shows that Celestial Oddities Radio puts out as well. So certainly something for absolutely everyone. And we are excited to be able to continue to bring you this great content. As we talked about, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, we are back. We took a little bit of a hiatus after Season 1 and are glad to be back with Season 2. Tonight is Episode 4 of Season 2. And, it's been a great season so far. From Jeremy Lee Pauley, who's an anthropodermic bibliopagist, which is the art of binding books in human skin, and an oddities collector and wet specimen human specialist restorator, to the Queen of Horrorcore, Razakel, to our last guest last week, which is War, great metal band from, North Carolina, who is doing great things right now. We announced, their Incarceration show coming up with Lamb of God and Papa Roach and a lot of other great names like Black Label Society, their upcoming tour and upcoming album. And this evening, we have another great metal band on the show. They go by the name of Dementia's Creed, and I want to tell you a little bit about them, who they are, and then we'll go ahead and bring them on the line and have, a good evening tonight. So, Dementia's Creed is an atmospheric progressive death metal band based from the Cincinnati, Ohio area. They started off as a project between friends during high school, and as time went on, they cycled through members until Patrick joined as a permanent guitarist, Matt joined as the drummer, and they became a trio for the first couple of releases. Slowly developing their sound, Sebastian joined during the writing/production cycle of their newest release, Ain Soph Arar, which can be streamed and purchased through Bandcamp. Join us tonight, pull up a chair, make a bag of popcorn, pop open a beer, grab your shovels and help us as we dig in and uncover the underground with Dementia's Creed. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing good.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I came across your guys' music kind of randomly. Was actually messaging a few bands about coming on this season's show, and I'm not sure you got Facebook, does that thing where it just reads your mind and it invades your privacy. And I was looking up these other bands, and all of a sudden it popped in and they're like, check out Dementia's Creed. And I'm like, okay. So I clicked on, I'm listening to it. I'm like, I dig it. And I just messaged you guys randomly. So it's fun because some of the guests on the show I've known for a long time, or I've known about their music or their art. Sometimes I just randomly stumble upon a really badass band, and that was the case with you guys. So, it was a pleasure to find you and to be able to get to, meet you guys and speak a little bit more in depth tonight.
Yeah, it's definitely a pleasure to be here.
So, obviously, I like the bio because it started out as just some friends kind of doing a side project, just having some fun jamming, and then it turned into something beyond that. And one of the first questions I always ask is very traditional. I keep it traditional, from the start is, how did you guys come to be, which we touched base on. But why don't you give us a little bit of a background? Did you guys plan on it becoming something serious? Was it just really supposed to be some after-school jammage between friends? I mean, why don't you give us a little bit of a background?
So, honestly, at first, it just started as, we were doing covers of projects, with that, it was me and my brother had originally formed it, and we had some other friends who played instruments and stuff like that. And, we would just do covers of songs and all that. And it was like I didn't even know how to play an instrument when I first started playing and all that. So people just moved on, like, either they graduated high school, they went to college, they had other stuff go on, life factors happened, or, just people just went on to other projects or anything else like that. So yeah, when I initially started, it was never supposed to be something serious, but it wasn't until that we were doing covers for a little bit that after a while, when, we started actually learning how to play the instruments more, and I started developing some really basic riffs or stuff like that, I was like, oh, maybe something could become of this. And then it just kind of cemented itself later on that it was something that I wanted to take seriously.
No, that's awesome. I love it whenever something that wasn't meant to really be anything necessarily becomes something, and it takes on a life form of its own. You start off as just some friends jamming or even siblings jamming, and then you fast forward a few years later and you look at what it's become and you're like, how did this happen? But it's always a fun journey to look back on and see. And obviously you guys have put out some really good releases. Your newest album that you put out, I think is a very nice quality product. It's got, very good recordings. It's got, awesome artwork on it. I like the meaning behind the album as well, because Ain Soph Arar is a Kabbalistic, as you guys are probably aware, Kabbalistic term standing for the infinite light. And I am a very versed and long time occult practitioner and priest who has been a ritualistic practitioner for about 17, 18 years now. So as soon as I seen the name, that's actually what caused me to check out you guys. I love the artwork. I seen the Hebrew alphabet, some of the letters across the album cover, and I seen the art, and I'm like, wow, okay. And then I clicked in and started listening to the music, and I liked that as well. And I'm like, all right, I'm messaging these guys. So it's actually your artwork and the name of the album, because you get so many suggestions, and I can't check out everybody. So whenever I seen the name, I'm like, all right, I'm checking these guys out strictly because of my preference. And one of the things that I put most forefront of my focus is Kabbalism and Kabbalistic theory and practice. So it's actually something very close to me. But no, kudos to you guys on putting together the album, the artwork, everything. How did that come about? I mean, I know you have a couple other projects, but how did this album, whoever wants to take it, how did this album come about, and how has the process been of writing it?
If Matt wants to go ahead, he could actually talk about more of the Kabbalistic influences, because while we wanted to go for like a more metaphysical kind of like concept and something that would be more of a broad scope that a lot of people could touch upon and relate to, a lot of those influences and concepts originally actually came from Matt.
Okay, perfect. Well, Matt, why don't you take it away, brother?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. So the album Ain Soph Arar is sort of a play on the Ain Soph Arar. Because a lot of the topics within the album are very cathartic and sort of, dealing with the trials and tribulations of life. And the play on it is, instead of, the infinite life, the infinite curse, how we're all kind of pulled out of the ether into the world and sort of left to our own devices to figure it all out, right? So, and as far as like the symbology on the cover, I actually did the, I guess you would call it prototype art for both the front and back. and we gave it to an actual artist to make it look good. And so the reason I picked some of the symbols, Teth is one of the symbols used on there, and there is a triangle going up and a triangle going down. Those are alchemical symbols for fire and water, and I guess those kind of reflected heavily in the songs that I ended up writing for the album, Rivers of Lost Faith, and gosh, now I can't even remember the name
Scorch.
of it. Scourge,
Embers
yes.
of Eternity.
Embers of Eternity, yes. So, in the Phoenician alphabet, Teth is a spinning wheel, which, symbolizes the unstoppable force of time. And the Teth is placed in the alchemical symbol for water, rivers eroding things over time. And if you listen to the lyrics, obviously it's about losing faith and eventually succumbing. And Shin, symbolic of fire, because of the three flames in the alchemical symbol of fire, endlessly burning, and also reflecting in the lyrics, burning amaranthe, or, undying fire, basically. So it tied into a lot of the lyrical content that, all the songs kind of combined. And I'll let Jordan express some of the songs that, he primarily wrote, and go off of that. But that's the gist of what we wanted some of the artwork to be. And the back of the album, sort of a play on I'm
no,
sorry,
it's okay. I'm
breath,
actually impressed because one of the things you come across, and I didn't want to ask anything too occult to you guys, and the reason why is I didn't want to put you on the spot, because sometimes you come across great artwork that has meaning beyond what maybe even the band realizes, and you don't want to throw out at them some real Kabbalistic terms and them say, man, I just found the artwork and thought it was badass. But when I looked at the artwork and I looked at the title of the songs, I listened to some of the content, I'm like, they do definitely have some knowledge in Kabbalism and of occultism. So hearing you explain your use of the Hebrew alphabet and the letters that you chose to use, like Shin, is interesting, because you obviously do have some background in that, and that's nice to see, because like I said, I have come across occult artwork before with bands, and just in basic talk, not really putting them on the spot, you could tell it was just simply that they found cool artwork and used it, which there's nothing wrong with. But I like to see that you guys have knowledge behind it, that you've thought this out, that you actually drew up the rough sketch of it and then had it brought to life, and then based your content, songs, names, and material around the basis of the album and stuck true to the actual album. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I guess to expound on the back, if you're familiar with the Hermit, tarot card, he has a lantern, right? And the lantern is in a whole other world than him in the art. So I thought it was basically, sojourning without a light, effectively.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I mean, and I love the fact that you brought that in as well, because that you're bringing in concepts of old Kabbalistic thought and theory to more new Hermetic Kabbalistic theory when you bring in the tarot into it, because with the Sephirah, the Tree of Life, you have the 10 Sephirah and you have the 22 paths, or total the 32 paths of wisdom. And it wasn't until the Golden Dawn got involved, and you have S.L. McGregor Mathers and some of the other cats out there like Aleister Crowley, who, attributed to the 22 paths. Not only were they already attributed to the 22 Hebrew letters, but they were then started to look at the idea, well, there's 22 major arcana trump cards in the tarot. So they attributed each path or each tunnel of Set to one of the tarot cards. So I love the fact that you bring that element in it as well. So kudos to you guys. I always, I have another show specifically on ceremonial magic and practice. So I can talk about occultism for hours, but that's not what we're here for tonight. So I'm glad to hear that we at least were able to kind of touch base on some of those things. And, obviously you guys to explain your reasoning behind it. Now, we were joking around, before the show. Folks, I'm going to play some of their music here shortly. But these songs are journeys. They're not just a quick snippet. They go in on it. And this actually has brought me to a question that I asked last season to several of our guests. Do you feel that you need to make a longer song like once was? Every song used to be at least an average of 4 minutes or longer. Now I find a lot of artists making very quick songs, and I've had artists kind of express both sides of the spectrum. Some say, well, we live in an age where attention is not being able to be kept long, so a quick, short, boom, boom, boom song, gets to the point and people love it. I've had other people say, no, I like to really dive in depth into the lyrics, into the instrumentation of the song. And, you have both sides of it. Obviously, you guys have taken the latter where you want to fully express yourselves lyrically and instrumentation-wise. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Was that kind of the purpose, that it wasn't supposed to be just a quick jam? You wanted to take these songs and really give the listener a journey while they're listening?
So it's actually kind of ironic that you say that, because it's kind of a catch-22, because I kind of have, I'm a huge fan of like longer songs and classical music, and they have their movements and all that collectively as a piece that, it'll be 3 to 4 separate songs that are maybe 3 to 4 minutes long, but all together they make a 15-minute long piece. Depending on the subject matter for the songs that I wrote, the first one is just a concept song. The idea behind Towers of Silence is back in ancient Sumeria and Babylonia and stuff like that. They would bury their dead or inter their dead on top of what they would call Towers of Silence to pretty much have the equivalent of Tibetan sky burials. And so that song is just a concept that I just came up with, that a guy winds up making a deal with Baal after his village gets killed, and he makes a deal with him to be able to get revenge. Gold Laden Eyes, however, I originally did not intend for that song to be as long as it was, but because what that song is about, it kind of inadvertently wound up being that long, because that one is more or less my version of Wings for Marie, because it's kind of it's in memoriam to my mom, who passed away from cancer, and how Tool did a Wings for Marie Part 1 and Part 2. I kind of just started writing. It was kind of a mix of me actually thinking critically about the song with theory, and then me just kind of letting whatever emotion I felt come to me, and it just wound up being what it was. And then for the title track, it was kind of just one of those things to where of thinking about what it's representing as a song and as an idea and other stuff like that. That's why for the first 5 to 6 minutes, there's no vocals. And then there's only that quick bridge part where it's just me screaming, because, it could just be the frustrations anyone's having with life, whether it's they had a bad week at work, their car broke down, just the state of the world in general. It was kind of like that. So then it was a good mix, because I have a really bad tendency of writing songs that can be way too long. And Patrick and Matt were able to contribute songs that filled in more of that space, but they were shorter songs. But, it wasn't just a quick 3-minute dead, unless it's maybe Scourge, which is only a 3 to 4 minute instrumental, and it still has a really good flow to it. But it was kind of just a good mix of having everyone's creative input be met where it needed to be met. As for songs that, maybe they go on too long, just in general, not from our standpoint, I can see how some people would say that, because, I'm a huge fan of bands like Agalloch or Opeth, that they're doing 10 to 15 minute long songs, it's nothing. While I can also listen to bands that do 3 minute long songs like Skeleton Witch or Slipknot, and I have no problem with that.
And I love that. I love the journey. I love that, you guys come with the opposite end, because I've seen so many people these days really try to shorten it. And it brings me to some other questions that I'll ask you guys this evening. But, I work with, artists, I work with models, I work with everything on this show. And one of the type of guests I bring on is hip hop artists. And you have some that have longer songs, and then you have more of a new wave that's happened in the last 5 or 6 years in hip hop, where the shorter apparently the better. And I had an artist on, and I'm not going to say any names because I kind of exposed this artist afterwards, and I have no support for this gentleman. He was a complete fraud. In fact, afterwards, I was able to show pretty in-depthly that every one of his numbers were a lie. And, and normally I wouldn't expose someone, but he went on, pretty insistently during the entire show about how he's just making bank and how he's crushing all these numbers. And then none of it was true. But needless to the point here is he gave me, I don't know, maybe 4 songs to play. And I'm expecting, you guys threw me for the opposite loop. I jump on a little bit beforehand. I download them into my system, and I give myself a half an hour to download 3 to 4 songs, usually very quick. When I pulled yours up and I seen it was like 23 minutes for 3 songs, I'm like, Jesus. This was the opposite. Yeah. And in fact, I had a different system at that time, and I didn't have to do it the same way. I was able to just drag and drop in this old system, didn't have as near good of sound. But I was like, all right, we're going to take our first break, ladies and gentlemen, and this song is such and such. I clicked, mute to the 2 channels and clicked play on the music, and I was looking down for a second doing something, and I looked back up, and it said 30 seconds till you're back on the air. And I'm like, wait, what? And I looked, and I realized the song was 1 minute and 47 seconds long. And when we came back, I was like, that was a really short ditty that, little diddle that you did there. And he's like, that's really about what most of my songs are. And I didn't know this at this time. I had heard a little bit of his music, but didn't listen to him that thoroughly. He was actually suggested to me from a different artist that he said, you should get this guy on the show. He's got big numbers. And then we played, I think, 4 songs that night. Total of his 4 songs was like 7 minutes. And it was just really strange to me, but I noticed a trend about that same time period that a lot of hip-hop artists started making 2.5, 3-minute songs, and that was it. That was a full song to them, and that was weird to me because I came from an era where every song was at least 4 or 5 minutes long. Yeah. So it's funny. We have the opposite tonight, like I said, with you guys. We got the Freebird extended version or the Anagata Davida, 17-minute songs going on. I love it. It's great.
Yeah. So I can say, so this is Seb, because I joined the band last, right as they were getting ready to basically record, or get ready to record. It's funny, I think your question was long or short. So I'm walking in, and it was probably the first band I'd walked in, and we had an hour and a half of material out the gate, just sitting there, completed. And so I can say, we were having a discussion right before we called in, and we were discussing that on the next one, starting to shorten things up a little bit, just because from Matt's perspective, it's a crazy drum performance. We had to play that album end to end, stuff like that.
Well, it's funny because, I think of you guys have a half an hour set this evening. How many songs you guys planning on doing? 2.
Yeah. We literally played a show where we played 3 songs.
That's awesome, though. That's very reminiscent of Toll. You guys mentioned Toll earlier. That's a very, when you go see Toll, you don't know where the songs end and they start. You just feel like you're on a constant journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tool's almost too much for me. I've been a Tool fan for many, many years, and I've seen pretty much every band on earth that anybody would ever want to see. For a long period of my life, that's all I did is either by myself or with my wife, binged on festivals and traveling around and doing 3-4 day festivals with 100 bands on them, and did that for years and years and seen everybody. But one band that always eluded me was Tool. And a few years ago, we seen Tool, and it was a really good show. They were the headliner of Rock on the Range, and I loved it, but at the same time, 40 minutes in, I was like, wow. I'm like, what is happening right now? I'm like, I don't know where it ends, where it starts, where I am, where I'm not. I'm like, they just completely atmospherically fucked me. And Maynard's up there, and he's like, they're standing all weird on stage, and like just the way that they are as a band, I'm like, this is so trippy. And I mean, I'm past my tripping days, so I'm like, if I was a teenager right now, I would be in the zone. I'm like, but right now I can't be in that zone any longer. And it was awesome, but at the same time, I felt like I was missing a piece of it, because I felt like they were trying to teleport me to the next world, and I just didn't have the ticket.
Yeah, I feel that.
Man, but Danny Carey, the way that he's able to keep all of his polyrhythms in sync is just admirable. Like, I wish I could get on that level. It's crazy.
They are phenomenal of a band. I mean, you have to say, whether you're a fan of Tool or not, I mean, listening to their content, I mean, them dudes can write. And there's nothing else like it. I mean, there's no other band on earth that's like Tool. My dad's a big Tool fan, so shout out to my dad out there. I know he's not listening, but you know, much love to you, Dad, you crazy bastard. My dad like lives and breathes Tool.
Yeah, I think and one of my influences, Porcupine Tree, man, they're also just up there on a similar vein, just completely really long songs, really complex drum parts. Gavin Harrison is an incredible drummer as well. If you haven't heard of him, check him out. But yeah, I got nothing else to say about that.
I haven't heard of them, but I will be checking them out now, because the name alone is just insane. So I'm like, I definitely got to give these guys a listen.
Yeah, if you even remotely enjoy Tool, definitely check out Porcupine Tree. Those guys are all over the place.
You know, another great band that I think of when I think of just absolutely phenomenal instrumentals and work together as a band. They take you on a journey, and there's something different as Dream Theater. You know, phenomenal band. Their drummer is just absolutely mind-blowing. And I remember when I was young and I was like early teens, I would put on, you know, drum videos of watching him, Mike Portnoy, and watching him just go to town on his like 80-piece drum set that circled the whole way around him, and I feel like I think he lived in there. And it was always a fun time watching that. So I put them up there as well. A little bit of a different sound, but I love Dream Theater.
Yeah. I definitely got to give them props and respect them as musicians, you know.
Now, we got some people tuning in. We got some devil horns in the air for some people, throwing some little emoji things out there. So one thing I will say out there to any of the listeners, as I said earlier, you can listen from anywhere that you feel comfortable listening from. But if you would like to tune in and listen and also comment or talk with us, there is an instant messenger feature on our hosting company, which is Spreaker, Spreaker, so speaker with an R, and that's Spreaker.com or the Spreaker app on the app market. You can listen and type to us during the show. I will read off your comments. I will ask our guests your questions that you ask. So please join us. We always, enjoy having you guys ask us some fun and lively questions. Now, I guess we talked a little bit about the artwork and a little bit about the meaning of the new album, you know, how you guys came to be. Now, you mentioned playing shows. How long have you guys been playing, you know, out for? Is it something that you guys are more of a writing project, or are you kind of a mix of both? I mean, you have some people that their main focus is playing out. Some people's main focus is writing. Some people is a mixture of both. I mean, how is the chemistry there between you guys?
I mean, I'd say that we're definitely a mixture of both. That, you know, if whenever our schedules align and if we have the opportunity to play shows, we're definitely more than happy to play shows. Also in the same vein of, you know, just us taking the writing very seriously and putting a lot of thought into it. But yeah, I mean, for us, we're definitely a mixed bag that, you know, if we could play shows and we get more opportunity to play shows, yeah, we'll definitely do it.
It's a shame I'm not still booking, guys, because I used to book a lot of metal bands. I mean, a shit ton. And would bring them from all across the country to Pennsylvania and have metal fests and have big shows here. Unfortunately, I got out of that. It was just a pain in the ass because it was me running everything. I mean, I was from sound to lights to, the dates to booking the bands to payment to everything. And it just got to be a point where I'm like, you know what, fuck this. But, for years brought a lot of bands around, and I think people would certainly receive you guys well here. You guys have a little bit of a different sound, and like I said, I love the look, so it'd be great to see you guys live. I'm a huge live guy. Don't get me wrong, I love CDs, but to me, there's nothing better than feeling it live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we have these guys. So a question coming in from a listener out there says, do these guys have any music videos on YouTube? And I got to be honest, I haven't checked you out on YouTube. I strictly listened to the album from front to back so far. Do you guys have any music videos yet?
As far as music videos go, no, we do not have any yet. That could be something that we could look into the future. As for right now, we do have physical pressings of our new album that if people felt inclined to purchase, that they can purchase. Otherwise, we're pretty much just up on YouTube and majority of other streaming platforms. But that could definitely be something that we could look into doing in the future.
Well, you heard it, folks. Pick up their new album, buy a copy of it, the physical. Don't just buy the digital. You know what? Fuck it. Buy the digital and buy the physical. Because if you're like me, the physical's nice.
The physical comes with a digital album right now.
Oh, game changer. 2 for 1, folks. Buy the new one, get them both. Support these guys and get them the money so that they can do one of those music videos that you guys want to see out there. The same gentleman who left that comment said word. So he's definitely going to be checking you out. Big fan of the show. Thank you, Chris. I'm a big lover of music videos myself. Whether it was I was a hip hop artist and did pretty well in that regard for a very long time, as well as a death metal guitar player for a long time, and nothing was better to me than the video side. I loved playing live. I loved doing recording in the studio. I loved practice, but I loved getting a chance to bring together a visionary experience for people. So if you guys ever get the chance, please do it. I would love to see it.
Yeah. And did you play in any bands when you did any guitar or anything?
Yeah, I was in a band called Souls of Ares here from Pennsylvania. Our singer Ian Bear ended up becoming the singer of Rings of Saturn, if you know that band.
Really?
Yeah, so their singer right now, Ian, he was originally with us, was discovered with us, and then got the opportunity, prodigy on vocals, and he was from the same town I was a lot younger than I was, and, we were pretty big in our area at the time, and he'd reached out to us a couple of times as a fan and used to ask pointers on his videos, and he'd send me these videos and say, man, what do you think of my vocals? And he was just a teenager, and I'd listen to him, and I'm like, you're fucking phenomenal, man. And we lost our singer, and he tried out for us the first time, and then ended up deciding he didn't want it. We offered it to him. And then we had some fill-in vocalists, and then he came back, and the reason he didn't want it, which I thought was admirable, he didn't feel like he was ready. And he came back to us a little bit down the road and said, I would like to try out again if you would have me. And he came in and absolutely dominated. And we had some really good times together, definitely my little bro. And then I had broken my back, taken a very far fall off of a roof. And while I was out, which I was going to be out for 9 months, so it kind of put a halt to shows, and we played every single weekend. He had gotten the offer from Rings of Saturn. Hey, man, would you like to be our vocalist? We're established. We got merch. We're on tour. And he asked us, what do you guys think? And I'm like, bro, do it. Go kill it, man. Take over the world. And I don't know how many years ago that was now. It's been a long time. But for the last, 7-8 years, maybe even longer, he's been fucking crushing it, touring Paris, touring Europe and everything. So much love to you, Ian, my little dude. Not little anymore. You've grown up and really, fruited into your own and really taken over the planet, brother. So much love to you. But yeah, if you ever want to check out my old band, we were called Souls of Ares.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that. I mean, that's actually a pretty cool story, that, you were actually in, jamming or, a writing process with someone that went on to a larger group and a successful group at that. So that's a pretty good feel-good story. Yeah,
it was a fun time, man. I mean, I've been lucky to work with a lot of artists who over the years have done very well and came out on their own and either became signed professional artists or have just had a very fruitful career. Like I said, myself, I had a pretty fruitful career for a while in the hip hop industry, and I've got to work with some huge names, and it's been a pleasure, man. It's been a fun journey. These days, I walked away from music in the sense of being in the forefront, and I love doing this. I love taking other artists out there, getting an opportunity to meet them, talk with them, pick their brain, and getting them out to the masses, promoting them, just for sheer fun of doing so and the love of music. So I like to take a backseat these days. Rather than be on stage, I like to see you guys on stage and me be able to help kind of bring some more people into you. So it's always been a passion of mine.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's definitely cool that you have that drive and passion to do that, and especially adapt to whether, something that you wanted to do when you were younger, whether it was some kind of medium that you were involved in or anything else, but, whether you didn't just keep pushing yourself and become completely burnt out and wound up hating the craft that you were in, that you're just like, I'll move on to something else. And you're still moving forward and being productive and just not stagnating.
That's it, man. Stagnancy is the death of a man. Whether you stay alive after you've reached the level of stagnancy, you're not really living, and that isn't me. I'm not one to stay stagnant. I like to keep moving, like to keep busy, and I always find one form or fashion to do so. So it keeps you young.
Yeah, no doubt.
So folks out there, I want to throw on the first song of the evening here and let you guys experience out there who these gentlemen are in a music sense. And I have 3 songs here, and I was going to kick in with Arrow of Time as long as you guys agree to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
We'll do that then. So folks, this song right here is called Arrow of Time, and enjoy it. We'll be right back here on Uncovering the Underground after this song. All right, guys, we're back on Uncovering the Underground, and for the last 42 minutes, we've been hanging out with Dementia's Creed, a band from the Cincinnati, Ohio area. Excuse me, couldn't talk there. And we just got done listening to their song, which is Arrow of Time. Great journey that we've been talking about. As we said earlier, if you missed any part of the episode, don't fret. You can go back afterwards and listen to it from the beginning. These are live episodes, so for now you have to listen with us till the end, so stick around, and then you can always go back, stream it, download it to your device, or on the go, whatever you like. But certainly should do so to catch up on the conversation if you missed any. As I said, Spreaker.com, where the Spreaker app will allow you to not only listen, but to chat with us. We have people in the chat right now talking, so feel free to jump in. We'll read off your comments and your questions to our guests this evening. Awesome jam, guys. I absolutely love that jam. And it looks like other people are as well. We got comments, brutal, love this. We have another one, killer sound. So we got some people already pouring in saying that they love the music, so that's awesome. You got 2 new purchases I see coming your way already just from these 2, and there's a lot more than them just listening.
I'm glad to hear it.
Well, we've talked about a lot of things this evening, but there's still things we need to talk about. And, you guys mentioned the fact that you are doing a special right now of physical copy purchases come along with a digital copy download. And that brings me to a question I used to ask a lot of guests, but I haven't really so far this season, which is, do you feel the age of physical albums is dying off? Now, before you answer that, where I look at it as, I'm not asking if you think it's dying off from your excitement to have a physical album, because as an artist, I always loved having a disc and looking at the printing on the disc and the booklet and just seeing the finished product in that sense. But I mean from an actual purchase standpoint, because I've noticed a trend where most people don't buy CDs anymore because it's much easier to download right to your device, because people have short attention spans, as we said, and it's just easy for them to jump on, click a button, download it instantly to their phone, and there it is, which brings upon its own problems. Albums not getting listened to fully because they start to listen to the first 5 songs into their car, and then the next time they get in, it's the first 5 songs again. So they absolutely love your first 5, 6 songs, but they don't know about 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that happens. There's a lot of trends that I see. I see people no longer selling albums, and it shows selling just cards, which you can buy, and then the card gives you the free download or the purchased download. So that's something I always worry about as well, is, do we see an age where albums go away? Because cars aren't even selling, vehicles anymore, dealerships with CD players in them. Most people don't have a CD player in their house anymore. I mean, it's really getting to an age where we eliminated discs and tapes and cassettes, and now it is just a digital age. So, I would like to hear a little bit from each of you. Why don't we start? Matt, I want to hear from you first.
Sure. Well, history tends to repeat itself, right? When I was growing up, my dad had a vinyl collection, and, everyone said vinyl is dead. And, only in the past 10 years, we've already seen a resurgence of vinyl from even major artists like Adele, printing 500,000 copies and, selling a lot of them. And so I think it's sort of an aesthetic thing. If you're like into physical merchandise for bands and you have a collection, it's sort of like that. It's like, you could say the same thing about, like, I don't know, anything that's been quote unquote antiquated as technology. And, someone out there is going to be interested in it eventually, just because it's reminiscent of past time. That's pretty much it.
No, I like that, because you're right. There is always going to be a niche group out there that they are CD collectors. They are album collectors. They like vinyl. They might never be taking it out of the vinyl and actually putting it on a record player and listening to it. They want it for their collection. They want to have that as a part of their support for that artist, as a part of their collection. So that I don't think will ever die. I think that's really, you kind of nailed it on the head, where it's not going to be necessarily for the everyday average consumer, but there's still going to be a base for it. So no, thank you. What about you, Sebastian?
Yeah, I was going to say it's twofold. So, like, at least in America, I think the way people consume music has pretty much predominantly moved to streaming and digital. And at the same time, like, we looked into doing some limited, LP printing, and it's so cost prohibitive now, plus time prohibitive, et cetera. I just see a lot of bands completely abandoning it simply because it's so expensive. And they're just looking at it from the standpoint that a lot of people are just streaming. So, like, to Matt's point, there will be that niche group, but you kind of can't overcome the marketplace in many ways.
And I think that's the problem. We have a comment coming in from a listener right now. It says, as a fan and collector of hard copies, it feels like it is. Like you said, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. It's easier and faster than waiting on shipping. Now, I look at that as a double-edged sword as well, that yes, people... We are now currently in an age of on-demand everything. I want it, and I want it now. It's like J.G. Wentworth everything. It's my money, I want it now. It's you want it, and you want it at the click of a button. You don't want to wait for it to come in the mail. You don't want it. You just want to bloop, there it is, and I got the whole album. And that's nice. That is very convenient, and I think that has really changed the game. But I think that it also, something as small as that has actually changed us as human beings because, and I've mentioned this in past episodes, when I was a kid, mowing lawns, saving money, getting someone to ride me to the mall so that I could go to the local CD store and browse, and I knew I had enough money for 3 new albums. One that I absolutely been wanting, 2 mysterious ones that I was going to find that day, and hopefully they would be good. Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. But I remember buying them, the feeling of buying it, the ripping the cellophane off, the peeling those little fucking stickers that you can't ever get off the top of the album and it ends up staying on the case. I remember all of that, the reading of the booklet, the thank you part of the booklet. That is something that is now missing for 90% of the fans out there. They don't even know, and if you go to a newer age, a younger age, they don't know that that's even a thing. They're just used to click, play. And that is nice, but I feel like they've lost the adventure. They've slayed the dragon without ever putting the armor on, and I feel that is a disservice to music as a whole, and as my personal opinion. And as another comment came in, I love reading the booklets. Yes, that was the point. I loved reading the lyrics on paper, not digitally on a screen, on paper. I loved hearing who they wanted to thank. I loved seeing the artwork that was on there. I'm a big art guy. So that's something I like to see. So, no, thank you guys for your opinions on that. Jordan, what about you?
I think it's just more so one of the things that, I guess, ironically enough, coinciding with the song you just played, Arrow of Time, that it's when we move forward through time, technology is always going to be constantly changing and evolving. If we look at how, say, for example, like many of my parents or grandparents would have grown up, if they wanted to go buy a book, they actually had to physically go to a bookstore, to where now we at least have the convenience of being able to order a book from a website. Even 20 years ago, like what would have been considered sci-fi, like I'm talking to you through a smartphone right now, that was science fiction like 20, 25 years ago. So I think it's one of those things that's twofold, kind of touching up on what Matt and Seb had said, that it's kind of just the shifting of the marketplace, adapting with how technology adapts at the same time. And then secondly, certain merchandise does have a planned self-obsolescence to it, to where, like, majority of like tapes or VHS tapes or stuff like that will only have a shelf life of like 30 to 50 years before they just like, they're bad and you can't use them anymore. So I think it's just that with how the world is constantly changing, to where they're not seeing a need to install CD players and cards. It's just more convenient to have like Bluetooth players or auxiliary cables. It would be in the same light to where, a lot of people wouldn't read physical media anymore, like books, because they can just do an audiobook. And I personally would say that, yes, there is a little bit of that disconnect there, because I also like collecting physical merch just for the sake of collecting it. I might run a vinyl a handful of times and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's like a collector's item. And I'll do the same thing for books, whether I'll collect books or, you know, I have copies I don't read and then I have copies I will read so they get to wear and tear. I think it's just more so for smaller artists, I can see it kind of dying out because, again, if you're looking into like pressing vinyls, it's going to be too costly. You're not going to get approved for it compared to you being Katy Perry. Who's like, hey, I just dropped a new album. I want vinyls. And they're going to be like, yes, because they know they're going to sell. So I think at some point in the future, probably long after I'm dead, that there might be a point to where physical media winds up almost disappearing completely. But I really don't see it doing it anytime soon because how vinyl came back, you know, in the past 10 years, like Matt mentioned, who knows if in the next 10 to 20 years that VHS tapes won't make a comeback or, you know, CDs won't make a comeback.
That's true. I mean, things do circulate and you just never know what's going to be the next fad and it's going to come back around. Now, you guys made a good point, you know, Jordan and Sebastian, you both touched on the fact of costs. As far as a small band, and something I think about as being an artist who lugged around a shit ton of merch. I had, you know, 15 different shirts. I had 7 different albums out. With my hip hop career, I had all kinds of posters, decals, koozies, all kinds of shit. And the problem with that is it's a lot of carrying around. And if you don't sell it right away, or you have so much that it's going to just take you forever to sell it all, the CDs eventually start to get busted, the cases, and then you're selling a busted case. Well, then that's not fair to sell that for full price, so you have to sell it for less. And then you're kind of ripping yourself off because now I'm busting the shit out of my merchandise no matter how much I try to take care of it. So you start to look at it that way. It takes up a lot of room. It has wear and tear on it. It's costly, whereas I can buy a stack of cards that have each individually their own number that you can go to Apple iTunes or whatever store you want to and download it from purchasing that card, or you can just go and purchase it without buying the card and I get residual money from that. So I do see that being a big motivator, but as you said, I don't think it'll ever fully go away, at least not in our lifetime. Now, what lastly, Patrick, what
I
do you
definitely
think about
don't
that?
see it going away.
I don't either.
Yeah, so my standpoint is, you know, from a practical standpoint, you can see it like you get a digital download and they send you an email, you know, with a receipt, with a redemption code, and that's always going to be there as long as you have email password. So, you know, in that sense, you can hold on to your digital purchases. Say you know, need to replace your phone and this or that, and, you know, you have to re-download all your music. Well, you have the receipts for it. Whereas, you know, if you buy a CD and you lose that CD, well, it's gone forever. You're going to have to buy a replacement. So I think that's one of the pros of being able to, you know, download your music and, you know, have it that way. From a collector standpoint, collectors are going to want to have the physical merchandise. So I think there's always going to be a market for it, but it's going to be a very limited market. Maybe down the road, you know, you might see, you know, a boom of CD sales when, you know, they're kind of like obsolete like vinyls are. So that's my view on it.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think about is I'm a hypocrite in the sense that I say I hate to see it go away from the feel of getting to open the CD and rip the cellophane off. I do miss that, and I always will. But I will be the first to tell you I spend a lot of time traveling, driving around, and, you know, I do have my phone connected Bluetooth because it doesn't have a CD player in it, unfortunately, which was kind of heartbreaking when I first bought the vehicle. It was the first couple weeks I didn't realize. I was driving around listening to Bluetooth, and then I brought my CDs from the basement, you know, into my car. I was so pumped to get to play some of my old albums, and then I couldn't find the CD player, and I'm like, where the hell is the CD player? And then I realized that there wasn't one.
Yeah.
So then I had to take the book back in, and I had a book of like 700 CDs in it. It was just massive, which, you know, is nice because it doesn't have to take up the room in my car now, but now they're just sitting in a booklet, and some of those albums you can't find on Amazon or Spotify and things like that. But I do look at the fact that I like to jump back and forth between different artists. So if I'm on the road by myself driving a 7.5-hour drive to another state, and I want to listen to 26 different bands during that 7.5 hour travel, I can do it. Whereas before I would have an album in, and then you got me holding this big ass CD case trying to flip through it while I'm driving, not safe for anybody. And then I'm changing CDs out, and it's just a pain in the ass. So for that sense, I will say it is very convenient just to be able to press a button and say, Alexa, play such and such, and boom, it comes on. Or Siri or whatever the hell everybody uses, or just to thumb it in yourself and find it. I mean, that's a game changer in itself. But like you said, guys, it's a give and take. You lose a part of it, but you gain something so much more, and that's just kind of the waves of humanity. There's always going to be a give and take.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it's one of those things that artists will, anyone who at least wants to remotely stay relevant, you got to evolve with the times instead of just being like, no, we're not just being staunchly like no digital sales at all. We're only doing physical. And then someone who wants digital, because I know people personally who prefer digital downloads compared to physical media. So I think any artist or anyone who's doing any kind of medium out there, most of them would just try and do their best to evolve with the times. And if it's what's more convenient and easier for you to be able to get whatever you're putting out there to the world out there, then, by all means.
Yeah, you have to. If you don't, then you get left behind. And then by the time you think, wow, I should have adapted, you're already so damn far behind, it's going to be hard to catch up. But that brings me to a question that we brought up last week that I did notice a new trend, and I don't know, for live shows whether you guys do this or not, but I did notice that there are bands switching over to mostly digital performances. And what I mean by that is no amplifier, direct in, sometimes even electronic drum sets that are plugged directly into the PA system. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Some people love it. Some people say it's easy. You're not lugging gear around. But I'm an old school cat, and I said about the fact that I loved carrying my full stack or half stack up 2 flights of stairs to a club that if I dropped my half stack, it was going to crush me going down the stairs. I loved those experiences because they sucked, but that was the times you remember. You remember lugging all that shit with your brothers on stage. You remember setting it up and the chaos and the running around. Whereas now I do see bands walking out on stage, guitars in hand, bass in hand, plugging directly into the PA system, no other equipment on stage, sitting down behind an electronic drum set, plugging directly into the PA system. And it's so simple. And I mean, that's great in one way. And as you said, maybe we need to adapt to new changes. But I'm a gearhead. I liked the equipment. I liked tube amps. I liked a full drum set. So, I mean, how is that for you guys as far as that dynamic? Because I honestly don't know. So could you explain that to me?
I'd say for, as long as like metal and music goes, I'm just purely like, granted, there are aspects of like being able to use like a DAW and like plugins and, just slot in a preamp or anything like that. And it just, do whatever. But one of the coolest things for me, at least, about recording this album is how we went about like developing the tone and sound, cycling through, this amp with this cab and all this other stuff and just experimenting. This brought out more of the low end. This brought out more of the high end. And, say, for example, even before this album cycle, I wasn't too keen on using distortion on my bass. But then Matt was like, hey, let's experiment with that. And then got a dark glass pedal, and I fucking loved how that sounded. So I definitely feel that, using analog equipment would definitely add more of, I guess, the ritual and experience of what you're going to see, especially with a live performance. And, there is a little bit more of you putting it yourself into it because, like you said, where if you're having to lug up a half stack, up 2 flights of stairs, you're gonna be like, oh man, this sucks. But, you're still putting yourself to carry that half stack up those stairs. Or, when you're having to take apart your rig or your pedal or your drum set or anything else and go back up and assemble it and all that stuff. Yeah, there definitely is that craft that goes into it of you as an artist are putting more of yourself into it instead of that complete disconnect where you just walk up and it's like, okay, the sound guys did all the work, boop, you just jack in. So I think for certain, I guess, genres of music or whatever, it could work, or just for the convenience of it. But yeah, also at the same time that, there's definitely that love and authenticity with like analog that you wouldn't be able to get with the other way,
I agree. I think that you're putting your resonance into your instrument by carrying it, by tuning it, by having to have the rig, by setting the tone, to carrying it from the vehicle up into the building and then back out into the vehicle. Like I said, I am a firm believer in the journey, and I say it a lot of things. The journey is what makes the fruit taste all the better. If you could just walk right up and pluck it from the tree, yeah, it's still juicy, but at the same time, it doesn't taste as good as if you have to hike up the fucking mountain to get it. And I'm the type of person who likes the hiking up the mountain. You see a lot more when you do that rather than just walk right over to it and take it. So I agree.
There. Yeah.
Now, real quick, one last question, and I'm going to jump to Patrick again because we haven't heard from you as much. I want to see, how do you guys, and then we'll go to another song, and then after that I got a couple of fun questions I'm going to throw out at you guys. As far as practice for you guys, I know that's a new thing, not new, but within the last decade has really changed for a lot of bands that at one point in time, really the only option you had to practice was physically getting together. You didn't have the option of really sending tracks back and forth because most people didn't have a home studio, couldn't afford a home studio. If you did have one, the quality was ass. They didn't have what they have out nowadays. So a lot of bands do it differently now. Some still only get together and practice. Some exchange files back and forth and practice at home, and then they get together from time to time to rehearse. What's the dynamic, Patrick, of your guys' band?
Yeah, so we kind of mix it up. We do a little bit, pretty much what's convenient, when we can get together. Usually we get together once a week. We rehearse. We do our thing. We'll share music over Discord and things like that, and, share ideas. And, we got a riff or something, we'll record it because, we all have computers and stuff, and we can all record stuff whenever we really want. So, being able to do that and then send it over is really easy for us. But yeah, I feel like we have more connection whenever we're practicing in person, as a band as a whole, than we would over, some other type of program. We actually did try having a practice one time. I forget what the app was. It was during the pandemic, and it just did not work out very well for us. There was just too many technical difficulties and things like that, a lot of latency and stuff. So, I can kind of see where, from your standpoint, where, it kind of sounded like ass, or things didn't go the way that you wanted to versus being able to practice in person. So we try to stick with that, the traditional, way of rehearsing.
It's it does help to be able to exchange files from time to time because you might, I remember writing, an entire song worth of guitar and then showing it to my guys, and they're like, what? It's a really good song, man. We're just not feeling it. And I'm like, fuck, I practiced this for 2 weeks before coming here. Shot to hell. Whereas if you're able to send that track to your guys and they say, I love the intro, but can you mix up the bridge? Then you can work on it at home. So I do like that aspect of being able to do so. No, back then it was really rough because there were some home recorders that, if you could, properly record on and send it to someone, you could make out what was being played, but it was garbage. And then eventually Audacity came out, and it was that free program, once upon a time, which I think it's still around, but it came out and it was a little bit of a game changer, but still, garbage compared to a lot of the programs that are out here now, like Logic and things like that. So it's, it's interesting, the progression of all of these things. And that's why I like to talk about them with bands, because we're at the precipice where, we are in the new digital age, but still advancing forward as we always will be. But we're not so far away from the distant past where a lot of these things didn't exist. If you fast forward 20 years later, everyone's going to know digital. No one's going to know any different. But we are at the age where we're kind of in between those two. So I appreciate you guys' answers and responses on that. We're going to jump into a second song, and then we're going to come back with some questions that are going to dig into your guys' mind on preference, and some of them are a little bizarre, so you'll have to bear with me on it. And then probably after that, we'll jump into your last song, because it's 25 minutes long, and and it'll take up the rest of the show. I'm joking, guys. It's only 11. But we'll go ahead and jump into the second song if it works for you. This one is called Rivers of Lost Faith, and this is by Dementia's Creed here on Uncovering the Underground. We'll be right back after this. All right, guys, we're back on Uncovering the Underground, and that was Rivers of Lost Faith, a song by Dementia's Creed, a band that we've been hanging out with for the last hour and 13 minutes this evening. Hopefully you've enjoyed their music, you've enjoyed the conversation and the connection. Make sure you go out and check them out on all social media, which we'll get into here in a couple of minutes, of where you can check them out. Pick up their new album, Ain Soph Arar, and you can not only buy the physical, but if you buy the physical, as a bonus, you'll get the digital. Make sure you follow them, go to a show near you, and check them out if and when they are playing in your town, in your area, and just support them. Reach out to them, show them some love, because you are the lifeblood of local music, and your support keeps us going as musicians more than you could possibly understand. So make sure you support good musicians, as you are this evening by listening to the show. So another great track, fellas. Very deep. Lyrical content is deep. The instrumentals are deep. I love what you guys are doing because, as I said, it's not just the sound. It is the cadence. It is the art.
I mean, I appreciate it, and I'm at least glad that the material is able to make you feel that. That's kind of what we were going for.
You sound very distant for some reason.
Is that any better?
No, you sound like a robot for some reason. I'm not sure. You sound like you're like 300 yards away. I don't know why. Nothing's changed here on this end. Let me see here what it's saying. I'm not sure.
Could try like rejoining or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe you have to rejoin. I apologize for whatever. I don't know if it had anything to do with me, but I'm apologizing anyway.
Is it still sounding like that? Or?
Yeah, for some reason, you're the only one.
Okay, one second. Let me try and leave and rejoin.
But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah, hey, no, you guys definitely have the overall sound and feel, and I like that. Like I said, I'm a big fan. You sometimes catch a little bit of one-sidedness. Someone who has amazing artwork, the recordings are trash, or they have great recordings, shit artwork, or they have great artwork and great music, they're just shit people. It's hard to have the whole thing, and it's nice when you catch it all, when you have a nice group that you can relate to, that you can talk to as people, and you know that they're sincere and they're good guys, and then they also have the look and sound. It brings it all home for me, because I'll be the first to tell you, I've interviewed hundreds of artists, and I've interviewed people who have phenomenal music and artwork, but they're just fucking dirtball people. And I call it as I see it. I have no filter, and it's nice. You guys are legit. You're real, and I like it. So much love to you.
No, I appreciate it.
Now, Jordan, I'm not sure if you're still like 300 light years away, but I mean, if you want to try to say something, you can.
Am I sounding any better now?
Oh, there you are, brother. You're back in action.
Okay, good deal. I guess at least what I was trying to say real quick, one, I at least appreciate you saying that. But what we were trying to go for presentation-wise on the music is, one, we were trying to step it up, like production and sound-wise from our previous releases, but we were also trying to, I guess in the way that you're at least reacting to it, we were hoping to at least, and even if everyone reacts to it and interprets it a different way because of, I guess, that ambiguity to the material itself, even though there is a presentation to it, we're also leaving that ambiguity so people can at least interpret the music how they want to interpret it. But for it to be able to, I guess, inspire you and reach you that way, that's at least speaking volumes to what we were able to do, because, you're interpreting it and experiencing it that way, but someone else might relate the same way, someone else might relate it a different way. So it's at least reassuring for us that, you're able to take it that way.
No, that's perfect. And it's sometimes that you just have to hear that every now and then. You hear how someone takes it that resonates right with you, and you say, wow, okay, that's great. We know that there's people out there that look at it and view it that way. Maybe not everybody will, but there certainly is, and I'm certainly one of them. So, no, I have a lot of love for what you guys are doing. Very impressed, and, glad I was able to get you on this evening and pick your brains. Obviously, we've talked about the changeover of digital world, from, more physical side. We've talked about the building of the band, the sound, the names, the artwork. Now is our time to kind of separate from that and just see who you guys are individually with a couple responses. We'll be able to do probably a cycle of 2 questions the whole way through, and then at that point, we'll probably phase out with the last song for the evening and call it a night. But this next 2 questions really speaks volumes personally rather than a unit. And, we'll do it this way. We'll do it backwards. Sebastian, Matt, Patrick, and Jordan, because the way I had it written down. And, the first question is, if you could have all of the time back that you put into playing your instrument, into writing, into practicing, rehearsing, shows, recording, all of it. If you guys could have every single moment of your musicianship back to put towards one other thing in your life, no matter what it might be, something you're already involved in, something you've always had aspirations to do and just haven't done, what would it be? And we'll start with you, Sebastian.
Oh, man. Let's see. For me, I think it would have been to get more into writing than I don't know, like screenplays, I guess, something like that, rather than music, if that were the other thing. Yeah.
Now, currently, right now, do you write anything on the side from music, in that field, or is it just something you've always, inspired to do and just never have had the time?
The latter. Yeah, so I don't write anything at the moment, but, no better time than the present, I guess. Well,
and I love this question, and the next 2 questions you'll hear, it really does dig into the thought patterns of someone, because you have people say, I'm really into this other thing, I just can't seem to find enough time to do it, or completely opposite, I have never been involved in this, but this is something I've always wanted to do. And I love to hear that, because it says who you are and your passions and what you love and what you would love to do if you could. So, no, thank you for that. I love that screenwriting. Matt, how about yourself?
Okay. Well, there's 2 real paths to this. And both of them I'm passively pursuing at the moment. One is video game development. I would probably pour all my time into that because I'm, my day job is a software engineer. And the other one would be developing analog horror series on YouTube.
Okay. No, both interesting and both different. So I like that as well as something aside from music that's very different than music. And as you said, programming video games, which, I haven't these days had time to really play much anymore, but I used to be a big gamer, and I couldn't even begin to tell you the basics of creating a game, but I sure played the fuck out of them. So that's pretty cool that that's one of your passions. And how about you, Patrick?
Let's see. This is tough. If I didn't pursue playing guitar, I don't know, really, honestly. I just started, that was really the one thing that I was more interested in. I would have to say I would play keyboard instead, because that's really the first instrument that I went to. So instead of playing guitar, I would have to say I would have been a keyboardist instead.
Okay, so you're keeping it in the field of music if you had the time back, but you would pursue a different path musically, which is similar. I mean, I actually started out playing keyboard myself. By no means was any good at it, but I mean, as a young kid, I started playing keyboard, and then I kind of dropped the keyboard, and then I picked up the guitar and found my love of my life at the time, and that's all I did for years. Every second of every day, played guitar nonstop. So I get that. It's something I've actually looked back over the years and said, I wonder what I could have done with piano or keyboard or organ if I would have stuck with it, because I knew what kind of guitar player I shaped out to be. If I could have done that on the keyboard, I could have been kind of unique, because there's a million guitar players, but there's not a lot of really badass keyboard players that you see.
Right.
And lastly, how about you, Jordan?
I'd probably say it'd break down to like 1 or 2 things. Probably one of them is the same as Matt said, like video game development design, just because some of the better memories I've had is like, you're having a game night with some of your friends and, I don't know, you're playing just like Halo or Super Smash Brothers or Mario Party, any game. And, you just have those iconic memories. So it would be something like that, or probably just some other medium of art. Like I can't draw or like paint to save my life, but if I feel that like, if I could devote more time to that, and if I did devote more time to it, I probably could have gotten better. And it just always astounded me how people were able to take some kind of like, here's a perfect example, our album art, from the rough sketches that Matt drew up to, us coming across the guy who did the art and just seeing the process of him working through it, stuff like that just always blew my mind. So I would probably say it would break down to one of those two, is like video game development in some way, shape, or form, or some other medium of art.
Okay. No, that's admirable. I am horrible at art. I can do a lot of things in the music realm or radio or, a lot of things that are, I guess, considered artistic. But when it comes to actually creating artwork, never been something I've been good at. I don't think even if I had all the time back I spent on guitar, I could be any good at it. Just wasn't in the cards for me. But no, I love to hear the answers, gentlemen, because like I said, that kind of explains your passion and lets the fans out there know who you guys are personally and what else you're into. And I love that question. This next one is completely fucked. So this is the last question of the evening, and I usually end it this way lately. And I will let you guys, after we do this, one of you can tell us where we can check out all of your links and things out, what you guys got coming up that we should watch out for, and then we'll jump into the last song and let it fade out for the evening. But this question is, you have one of two choices, so it's kind of a would you rather type scenario. It's okay. The end. Your life is about to come to an end. You really don't have any way of getting around that. You have two choices. The choices are, you can hold your loved ones near and dear to you. You can hold them, you can hug them, you can kiss them. You can be with them in your last moments. But you are not able to say a single word to them. There is no talking amongst you. There is no writing notes. There's no anything. Just merely the physicality of holding and being near and dear to them. Or you have the option of saying everything to one another and everything you ever wanted to say to them before you go. But you're separated by a barrier and distance so that they can hear you, but there is no physicality at all. What do you choose personally? And the reason I ask this question is it says a lot about someone's personality. There is no wrong answer by any means. Some people are more vocal, some people are more physical. I like to hear where my guests are mentally on this question. So let's do it the opposite order. Let's start with you, Jordan.
I would probably have to say between those two choices that I would choose being able to say whatever you wanted to whoever you could say what you needed to, based off of two factors. Even though you, in the other instance to where you wouldn't be able to say anything, sure, you could convey a certain amount of emotion with facial expressions and stuff like that. I think the other thing influencing my choice is because I've read studies and articles about how they've said that either when people are in comas, you can talk to them and they can hear what's going on. Like one case was a guy who was in a coma for 10 or 15 years or whatever. And he heard his mom saying, "I wish you would just die," And then other studies saying that when, you have loved ones who are in the hospital who are dying and, their brains are just firing off the last synapses before, they pass on, that you can talk to them and they will still be able to audibly hear you, even though they might not be able to fully understand it and process it. So I think with being able to at least physically speak what would essentially be your last will and testament to a loved one and get across whatever you're wanting to get across, I think that's why that would be my choice.
No, makes sense. That's why I like it. Everybody has their own version of what makes sense to them or what would be near and dear to them. So thank you for sharing that with us. Patrick, what about yourself?
I'm going to have to go with the opposite. I'm going to have to go with the option one, just because I'm not very vocal when it comes to last words. So I think just having my loved ones there with me and being able to physically interact with them, to me, I think that's more than any words can, make me feel better or anything like that. So it's just, that's just my opinion. It'd be nice to be able to talk and, things like that. But if I had to choose, man, I would definitely rather be able to see my family and my loved ones before I go out.
No, I appreciate that. And how about you, Matt?
I would appreciate the physicality more, simply based on the principle that if they are truly my loved ones, that I would have said everything I need to say before that moment.
Okay.
And that last, physical touch would be enough.
Okay. No, makes sense to me. And how about you, Sebastian?
I think I would go with the isolated option. I just think I probably couldn't mentally take it, being in the same room with somebody as that was going on.
Okay, so see, we have a divide here, and that's why I like this question, because usually it's very seldom that you're going to have a whole group agree on the same side. You have people that are more vocal and can do a lot more, verbally than they can physically. Then you have other people that say, as Patrick said, I'm not a very vocal guy, but I would love to hold my family because I'm maybe not able to articulate the way I would want to verbally. And then you have other people that just need to get it off their chest. They're like, I have to say the things. They might know the things, but I have to say it. There's people that just have to always have that last word too. And they say, I have to say it, whether you know it or not, you need to hear it out loud. So no, that makes sense. And I appreciate you guys giving that answer. I know it's a little bit of a bizarre question, but it has multi-layers of depth to it. And I appreciate your guys' answer. So that'll finish us out for the, talk show and interview this evening, other than the fact that I would like one of you gentlemen to tell us where we can check you out at, your links, anything that you think we should know coming up as far as, things to be on the lookout, any last words that you guys would like to say. And then once we're done, I'll jump into the last song and we'll be done for the evening.
If you want to check us out, you can either go to our bandcamp page or Facebook page. We have our music linked on YouTube at most streaming services. You can just check us out there. As for looking out for anything on the horizon at some point in the year that we're going to try and get some shows booked, they would more so probably be local to our area unless we get lucky enough to potentially get one that's out of town. So we'll have to see how that goes, just depending on how schedules line up and, availability and other stuff like that. Realistically, that's probably the only thing that would be on the lookout for us in the near future, unless we get other physical merchandise printed, which I know that we're looking into getting some shirts printed because a lot of people said they've liked the artwork and stuff like that. Any other physical merch that we, might explore the avenue of that. And potentially at some point, someone had asked if we have any music videos, we could explore that avenue as well. So those are just some of the things that you can look out for us in the near future.
No, that's great. You heard it, folks. So please, if you're listening out there, you enjoyed the talks that we've had this evening, you've enjoyed their music, as I've already said before, please pick up the new album. It's called Ain Soph Arar, and you can find that on, obviously different platforms online, but you can reach out to the band directly through their Facebook page, and they will hook you up with where you can purchase that at. Buy a copy. It comes with a free download. Be keeping an eye out for any shows that might be coming near you, as well as physical merch. Shirts would be awesome, gentlemen. I would certainly buy one if you had I'd buy one either way, but if you have the album cover artwork on there, I would love to have that for multi reasons. But support folks, a great band, great gentlemen, and help them continue to do what they love to do so that they can bring you what you love, which is great quality underground music. So gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on to Uncovering the Underground this evening, talking with me, letting me pick your brain. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Fun.
Oh, not a problem, gentlemen. Well, folks out there, we're going to play one last song as we fade out for the evening. This song is the longer of the three, so jam out, enjoy this one. This is called Towers of Silence by Dementia's Creed here on Uncovering the Underground. We'll catch you next week. Have a good one.